Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. And you want to stay tuned today because Marcus and I are going to be talking about the 44-day end that happened with the continuing resolution that finally passed that we talked about last week. And we're also going to be talking about what's happening at the Supreme Court level. So let's chat about that. Welcome back, Marcus.
Welcome back. Where you been?
Where have I been? I've been hiding. On the last show that aired, we weren't sure when the government was going to open up again.
That's right. But I tell you it's going to be before Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, you called it.
Yeah.
You definitely called it. But now I think that it is appropriate for us to talk about, now that it has been passed and signed by the president, what that means. I'd like to get your overall thoughts, though, about the passage and that whole thing, because it's 44 days longest in history that the government has been shut down. So I'd love to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, glad it's over. Like the Speaker Johnson said, the long national nightmare is over. It was something that I expressed very early on, right? It should never have been done.
Yep.
It's the responsibility of the leadership in the House and Senate. Mm-hmm. They're the legislative branch. They're the appropriators. Never mind the executive. It never works. It's never good.
Nope.
And I think the pundits are coming back really hard and heavy upon the Minority Leader Schumer.
So what do you, as a Democrat, how do you feel about those few Democrats that jumped ship to open the government?
Well, I think the 7 or 8 of them believed that they needed to address it. Some of them had some philosophical reasons, like myself, that it doesn't make sense to shut it down. There's other ways of negotiating and leveraging, to make your point or to get your policy decision approved. But shutting down hurts too many people, and it went on too long.
So, I don't want to put you on the spot, and so, be honest if you don't want to answer this, but this has been in a lot of the conversations I've had lately, is that all 4 of our congressional representatives and senators voted against reopening of the government. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's more of, abiding by the wishes of their leadership in the state, in the U.S. Senate, with Senator Hirono and Senator Schatz. They being high-ranking members of the minority caucus, the Democratic caucus in the U.S. Senate. It makes sense to some degree because it's fait accompli. It's going to be approved by the majority of the body, especially with those 7 Democrats, switching their position and their vote out of the caucus. So it doesn't mean much about it. It's more on keeping and maintaining the relationships with their leadership in the U.S. Senate. It's a very practical political calculation to be made. Similarly, in the House, Congress, right? Both with Congresswoman Tukura and Congressman Case. Their votes really didn't mean much, right? Because the majority was there already. So again, to stand by their caucus, their leadership team, and on the principle that they went into this shutdown, making sure that those who need affordable health care through the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies was important, and that's what they wanted to fall on their sword for. So you got to give them credit for following through on their commitment.
That's actually a good point, because even though the resolution was passed and now they've funded the government until the end of January 2025. In some cases they went all the way to the end of 2026.
Yeah, they went through the entire fiscal year.
Yeah. So but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily over. So what would you tell listeners and viewers who are really angry, and trust me, I'm hearing this. A lot of people are really angry, one, about the shutdown, but number 2, that this whole thing about Republicans blaming Democrats, like calling it the Schumer shutdown, and then you've got the Republicans or the Democrats calling it the Trump shutdown.
Yeah.
I mean, so people need to contact their representatives and senators. So what would you tell them to say?
Well, I think they need to understand that this was a just a bad decision by both political parties. I think there's no winner, a lot of losers on this. But the more important thing is going forward right now, there's time now between November, December, and January to resolve this issue. How are you going to address those 22 million or so individuals out there who have been relying upon government subsidies since at least 2021 or 2022 to help them purchase insurance on the marketplace? Because there are going to be some effects and consequences.
Yeah.
So I think that's why the president has come up with one idea of maybe taking some of that money or a portion of that money, instead of going to insurance, give it into a flexible spending account, federal health savings account, and use that to offset some of the deductibles or out of coverage services, maybe some pharmaceuticals, maybe some other kind of medical needs that are not being covered by the insurance. So that's one idea they're discussing right now. It's not a new idea. It's been around for a while, but I think that's where the discussion is going to go. There's also the idea of maybe making an adjustment, maybe instead of 400% federal poverty level, make an adjustment, maybe bring it down a little bit more, or maybe the 8.5%, maybe go to maybe 10% or 11%.
I was going to ask you about that.
So there's variables that's on the table right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you ran the finance committee, right? You were head of the finance committee for a long time. And the other idea that Trump is floating around is giving the $2,000 rebate. I don't know, is rebate the right word for it? Because it's money that would come from the tariffs, but he's talking about sending a check, a $2,000 check to taxpayers up to a certain amount of money that they make. What do you think about that?
I think that's somewhat gratuitous, really. I mean, you can probably use that $2,000 more collectively as a whole. Well, it depends on how he wants to distribute it, right? But it's a one-shot deal, one and done kind of thing. It sounds good, right? I get $2,000 just before Christmas. It's great. Thank you, Uncle, Donald, right? You know what I mean? But, is that the right policy, right? Is that the right choice of public money since we all paid into the tariffs, right?
Well, that's okay. So
it's not like it's free money now.
Well, this idea of free money drives me absolutely insane. Like I keep hearing people, we need free busing, we need free healthcare and all that. I mean, do we not understand that nothing's ever free? It might be free to the person getting it.
Sure.
But it's not free, which means they have to pool money from somewhere to pay for these free services, which is going to end up being on the square shoulders of you and me, the taxpayer.
There is no such thing as a free lunch. Okay.
Well, isn't it frustrating? Because that's what we hear a lot of the younger generation talking about. I should have free tuition. I should have free health care. And it's like, there is a discussion to be had about making things available, especially people who are sick. I go back and forth on this.
I think healthcare, there's a lot more we can do in healthcare. I think maybe the president, to his credit, has an inkling of that maybe the middleman is the benefit managers. That's one thing that they're doing right now, that Department of Human Services is looking at right now. There's also the idea of the insurance companies, right? Maybe there might be a better way, right?
Yeah, because they're making a killing right now. Let's be honest.
So that's why there's the other extreme is going. Let's go with Medicare for all, Medicaid for all, right? Let's just take care. Let the federal government be the insurance company, right? The collective, right?
Right.
Collective pool, right? So you address these issues, right? So.
Yep. Well, that's interesting. Like you, though, I'm very glad that it's finally over and now we can get down to business. And there's a lot of debate yet to be had on the congressional level. So it's not like this conversation is over. It's just we kind of kicked the can down the road in some aspects,
I think
right?
it's a hard question. There's ups and downs, pluses and minuses. There's uncertainties to some extent, and it's so important and crucial to all of us because it's healthcare, right?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Basic, right?
All right, so let's take a few minutes to talk about how this resolution now is going to affect Hawaii. So let's talk about relief from immediate shutdown pressure. That's the ultimate thing, right? Because when they shut everything down, there was that immediate pressure and all of that. So that now has gone away.
Yes.
But So it restores funding, right?
Right.
It's my overall assessment of this, so definitely correct me, is that it's restoring funding through January 30, 2026. But there are aspects of it that, like you said, fund all the way to the end of 2026.
I think, the fiscal year October, I think, of 2026. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I did you have a chance to look at that to kind of break down?
I didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's a 300+ page bill, and
It's not light reading
no,
overnight.
it's not. And they don't write it so that you can make sense of it in a normal sense.
Even the Cliff Notes version is pretty heavy.
Yeah, this is where AI can really play a helpful role. Without letting AI do all the work for you, it can definitely build.
Better check that AI, because sometimes they cite different things.
Well, okay.
They call them ghost citation, right?
Well, it was interesting because when I did an overall reading of it, and I said, wait a second, I noticed that it had some hemp stuff in there, and so I asked AI, I go, did I read this right? Is that included? And it came back and it said yes.
And then right, it is right. I mean, they've been talking about it. People in Kentucky have been talking about it with, Senator McConnell. What's going to happen to the people in North Carolina, Georgia? These guys who went from tobacco because it's bad. Let's go grow hemp because it's good, right?
Should we have Senator Gabbard on the show to talk about this? Because this is his pet project, right, here in Hawaii.
Oh, yes. Yes. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, And right now, Department of Health is going through regulations to look at the current hemp products being sold. And there's questions about the hemp products being sold. Do they meet compliance with the state law regarding hemp vis-a-vis the THC content of medical marijuana, recreational marijuana? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So, and again, I want to make it clear that this is just my overall assessment of this, right? So it looked to me like the bill defines hemp-derived cannabinoid product as any intermediate or final product derived from hemp other than industrial hemp that, one, contains cannabinoids in any form.
Right.
Two, is intended for human or animal use through ingestion, inhalation, topical application. So are we not talking about edibles?
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, yeah. Right. And also liquid forms like soda pop, right?
Right. So in states where all of this stuff has been legalized, do you see that there's going to be an issue or?
Oh, definitely.
So what about our legislators here in Hawaii who are now talking about the possible legalization? Is this going to affect their discussions?
It could kind of murky the water a little bit, but they're talking about recreational legalization of marijuana, full-blown THC, right?
Right.
Just changing the label of the medical marijuana to recreational marijuana, right? Change the label, right? Turnkey operation.
Right. But the stuff in the bottle is still the same.
This is so-called hemp, so it's a smaller amount of the cannabinoid THC, like 0.04% or 0.05%, but a smaller amount, but still has some effect upon the brain chemistry.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was why I do remember, and I think it was last year, I'd have to go look at all the shows we did. I'm pretty sure that in one of those shows you talked about how it's why Hawaii really shouldn't rush into legalizing marijuana because there's too many shifting parts that are happening in all of these discussions in all of these states, even the ones where it's legalized.
Yeah, I think a lot of the states that were the early frontiers getting into the legalization of marijuana, the recreational, I think they're looking at their data. I think they're looking at their medical data, the scientific data, the evidence that they had before, and it's undeniable. There's something bad going on out there, especially with younger people.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of controlling it, regulating it, keeping it away from younger people, like how we control and keep cigarettes away from younger people, or we control and regulate and keep liquor away from younger people, I don't think it's working. And I think they're finding out right now.
Yeah, the vape. I mean, I always bring up the vaping, right? I mean, it's off the charts on the amount of kids that vape.
Yeah, like we're number 1 and number 2 in the nation for the most vaping teenagers, middle school, elementary school.
But they can control marijuana, though.
Right. Okay, you know what that means,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Right.
Yeah,
Like my
yeah,
eye. Right?
yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Well, okay, so that was one aspect of the bill I thought was interesting, or the resolution that I thought was interesting that was in there. The federal workforce and the contractor stability now is at least we have that, right, because we have a significant footprint, right, in
we
federal
do.
jobs, military installations,
We do.
et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah, there's a lot of trucks going in and out of the bases with private contractors, small mom and pops, small organic Oahu based, Honolulu based, locally based, construction companies, electricians, plumbers, technicians, roofers going in and off the base based upon contracts. Mm-hmm. Now they'll get paid.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
And these affect families, which is why Hawaii Family Forum does what we do. And that's why you have to go to hawaiifamilyforum.org and sign up to get our alerts. So you know every time there's a bill at the state capitol that affects you, so you can plug in. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
No, you're right, because they should watch it, because this is they get the truth unvarnished.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like,
and I mean, to the point where
people know you and me.
I know.
Like,
yeah.
We don't pull punches,
and
right?
We've been around a long time, Marcus.
We call a spade a spade.
Yeah, that's right. And do we always agree?
No, not.
That's what makes. I think
in every family, right? Brothers and sisters,
that's right.
They gotta.
That's right.
Tussle a little bit, right?
I know. I always tell everybody this story. I totally remember when we were fighting here in Hawaii on the medical marijuana.
Yes.
And we didn't weigh in. Other than we submitted testimony, but we didn't take a position. It was just we were saying, we're concerned that this opens the door,
yes.
but at the same time we understand that medical marijuana can be used in cases like cancer and all of that.
Right.
So we were trying to be good. And I remember you came up and go, "What are you doing?" You should be opposing this, because you saw, and it's really interesting. This was a long time ago. Medical marijuana was in the middle 2000s?
Yeah, this is middle 2000s. Yeah.
I mean, you saw it back then that this was, it was definitely.
We put that plug in there early on when doing Kayatano.
Yeah.
It was a live and let live, grow, and turn your eye.
It's Hawaii, Maui, Waui,
right.
Kona Gold.
No, it was really the kind
way.
of live and let live, compassion.
Yeah.
But when it became regulated was when the western states, Colorado, Washington started to take off. We kind of based it upon that model.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible model because we never took the baseline data, and I kept saying, get the baseline data. All the states are telling us that.
And this is why I miss the good old days when there were both Democrats and Republicans doing fantastic floor speeches, because you were one of the few Democrats that would stand up during the debate and just kind of sharing all this kind of stuff. And I really miss that. We're to a point now where both sides just do talking points, and there's no real. In my opinion, I just don't really feel like there's that real spirited debate.
We're going to encourage that next thing. I have some ideas for next session.
Okay, so you got to make sure that you come back for the next show, because we're talking about the elections in the next show and some of the things that are happening on the Supreme Court level when it comes to elections. So stay tuned for that. So in this last 10 minutes or so that we have, let's kind of shift gears for a while and talk about the Supreme Court, because there have been some interesting things happening. But what I want to do is I want to kind of just give an overview on some of the things that passed in the 2024-2025 term. Just, this is not all of them, but these are just some that we've talked about in the past. The United States versus Skermeti, right? And this was the one regarding state laws banning gender-affirming care for transgender adolescents, right? The court held that the Tennessee's law was not subject to heightened scrutiny under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Right. So that was one, and we've talked about that.
Yeah, that's an important case, because what the Supreme Court decided there was that in a normal course, states have the right to regulate medical practice, especially with children. So it differed on that way. It wasn't a matter of sex. It was a matter of what's proper for that age group of their citizens. And that's how they weighed on it. That was the policy of the state of Tennessee. And so it passed muster. There was a rational basis for that policy. It wasn't to discriminate. It was a rational basis. And that's how Skermeti came out.
And I mean, I remember when the decision came down, it was like, I almost felt like are we the canoe is being righted? You know, the course of the canoe now is. I feel like there's somebody steering the canoe now that can get it in the right direction. Because for a while there, I thought we were going in some crazy directions.
Yeah, so it goes back to the states. So different states can make different choices on what they want to do with their healthcare for, especially for minors, and that's as long as they have a rational basis to make the distinction. It should pass constitutional muster.
And this is the perfect opportunity for me to remind you, this is why you have to sign up to get Hawaii Family Farms alerts, because it's your voice at the state capitol that's going to make a difference when they start discussing this. Because as Marcus said, these decisions are thrown back to the states. So depending on who's representing you in that state house, right? This is where...
Or state senate.
Or the state senate, right? This is why you got to raise your voice.
Yep.
So along that line, though, the whole transgender thing, there was Mahmoud versus Taylor, right? And this is the one where the justice granted a preliminary injunction to parents who challenged a school board's use of LGBTQ plus inclusive storybooks, right? They held that the government cannot condition public education on parents' acceptance of instruction that undermines their religious beliefs.
That's correct. Parents should have a right to know what they're being taught or children are being taught, and option of opting out of that.
And funny, I know people on both the liberal side and the conservative side that this is one area where they all agree. Parents should have the final say.
They agree, and I think especially in Hawaii, Hawaii people by and large don't want to beef, don't want to fight with each other, and they understand, they're sympathetic to each other's different philosophy or way of life. So, if it can be avoided, avoid it, right? There's no need to make a Supreme Court case out of it, right?
And you said it before. How many cases actually get accepted by the Supreme Court?
A very small number.
And how many get up there? Very large number.
Yeah.
So you get big number, you get small number. So relying on the Supreme Court to make decision. And we're going to talk briefly about one that did not get accepted.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
Not all of them get accepted. So now this is a case that they decided that I thought if Jim Hochberg was still here, he would have been dancing on rooftops, right? And that was Garland versus Cargill, right? And the court held that semi-automatic rifles with, quote, bump stocks do not fall under the statutory definition of machine guns and thus cannot be banned by the ATF under existing law.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the gun laws, and it's really interesting when I talk to Jim, and of course, if he watches, he's going to make his comment below.
Sure.
That, he strongly believes in that Second Amendment.
Pretty much farther than I would probably.
Oh no. Having you two on the show together would be fascinating.
Yeah,
Maybe we need to do that. That would be great.
I'm a couple of notches down from where he is. His volume is up there. I'm kind of below center.
I would say that I'm a conservative, but I have to laugh when it comes to the gun issue because I grew up here in Hawaii. I have such a different view because because of our laws here, it's not like everybody here are born with guns in their hands, right? And they go like skipping down the street and know how to hunt and all that kind of stuff. And not that people don't hunt in Hawaii. I know people that have gone and hunt wild boar and stuff like that since they were small kids.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's appropriate, for hunters and gatherers and people who want to go feed their family and eradicate some of the hoofed animals out there. I think it's great. To take out the wild pig, the wild boar, to take out that goat or that sheep or that deer, Bambi.
And here's a tip for any of our mainland friends who come down here. If you see a mama boar and her babies, do not go over there and try to take pictures, right? I mean, those mama boars, they will rip your face off if they think you're going to do anything to their baby.
They're like a miniaturized, mean buffalo bison.
They're cute though. They're cute and wonderful, but it's like mongoose. Mongoose are not like squirrels. They do not go over there and think you're going to play with a mongoose because a mongoose will rip your face off too. Wonderful things we have here.
I like your descriptive. Really...
I got to bring in the local spirit, right?
Right.
An interesting one, and I'm not sure if you were watching this one, was Trump versus Casa Inc. The court ruled that the universal or nationwide injunctions issued by lower courts likely exceed their equitable authority, thereby limiting the ability of lower courts to block federal policies.
That is going to be a blockbuster of this Supreme Court term, because what it basically does this, it's going to decide whether a single federal district court, there's many scattered throughout the 50 states, can put an injunction on a presidential proclamation that affects all states, even states outside that particular state jurisdiction. This is a big question. This is a big one.
Well, it's because I never saw it in my lifetime where it seemed like everything Trump did, one of the lower courts said, you can't do that.
So I think what the listeners and viewers should know, Trump is doing, and no other president has done this probably, he's pushing the envelope. He's second term. He's using his Department of Justice to push these issues, to push it as far as he wants to, and to say, you let me know, court.
Clarification.
You let me know, court, if I'm going too far, and then I'll pull back.
Yeah.
Or you tell me if I'm right. And he's doing it now, early in his term, so that in the first year of his term,
he's got clear guidelines.
He got 3 more years, and he can go and petition the Congress to change the law or take another approach. You watch what happens to the tariff. You haven't seen the last of it yet.
Stay tuned.
You haven't seen the last of the tariff issue with Trump.
Sounds like a show to me. I mean, that's why we keep telling people to keep watching, because the show, everything we talk about seems to be like one of these vicious circles. We just keep coming back to it. No,
it's relevant. It's relevant. It's real. It's real time. I mean, we're not playing around. I mean, I'm not just guessing, pulling things out of my, the air. Yeah. Sorry.
So let's talk about a case that was not accepted by the Supreme Court for the upcoming term.
You tell me. Is that woman, that clerk?
It is, yes. It's a clerk that back in the days of when same-sex marriage was first passed, she refused to put her name on the marriage license.
She said, no, I'm not going to do that.
She
That's
said,
against my faith. That's against my belief. I don't believe it.
And so this argument has been going back. Now, what's really interesting is that they did find somebody else to put their name on it, but that was not good enough for the couple.
Right.
The couple said, nope, we want your name on it.
Yeah. She was like the first assistant, whatever, clerk or whatever, right? Yeah. She refused.
So the Supreme Court has refused to hear this case. What's your thought about that?
Well, I think the decision was based upon the fact that there's already been established precedent, since Obergefell. And maybe the Supreme Court, the current composite of the Supreme Court, even with the minority and the majority factions or the conservative or liberal factions, just looking at it thinking, is this the time? This is a place? Is this the right set of facts? To go back and review the Obergefell decision. Yeah. Maybe there's things that are going to be settling out in the states right now. Maybe there's other kind of issues. So this might not be the appropriate case. So despite what people speculated, they heard or they saw or they understood out of the Obergefell with some of the Supreme Court justices, maybe the current composition felt this is not the appropriate case for this issue.
So it doesn't mean the conversation's over. It just means that this was not the right case.
Not at all.
Yeah, because that's
not at all.
It's like I think people on both sides of the issue know that this issue is not over, right? No. I mean, people that are in same-sex marriages, they're worried, right, that sooner or later this discussion is going to come back and nullify their vows. And then you've got people on the other side that said the decision should never have been made to begin with.
Yeah, there are those on both sides, and maybe some degrees to the left and right within that. But for this particular Supreme Court, the composition currently, and the case that was presented to them, they decline. And that's their prerogative, right? So it says a lot by not doing a lot.
All right. Well, and that brings us to the end of the show today. We appreciate you for spending time with us once again today. Make sure you come back for the next show because we're going to be talking about the missing $35,000. No, we're going to find out. We're going to do a whodunit. We're going to try to figure out where that money is. So you want to come back and listen to that show. But make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know every time we upload a new video. And in the meantime, we will see all of you next week. Mahalo, everybody.